Life in solitary confinement. The psychological toll on prison inmates. Before we go any further, if you're drawn to the darkest corners of real crime, if you want the truth buried beneath concrete and steel, hit subscribe, tap like, and leave a comment now. Because once this door closes, it doesn't open easily. The hallways smell like disinfectant and old fear. Red and blue lights bounce against the concrete walls of Westbridge State Penitentiary as correctional officers sprinted past rusted cell doors. Somewhere deep in the isolation wing, an alarm screamed a flat, mechanical sound that meant something had gone very wrong. In cell 23, at the end of a corridor designed to break men without leaving bruises, a body hung slump against a steel bed frame. Inmate Daniel Reeves, age 38, serving a life sentence without parole. He had been in solitary confinement for 417 days. When the first guard reached the cell, Reeves's eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, unblinking. His mouth was stretched in a half-smile that didn't belong to a dead man. Carved into the wall beside his head, scraped deep with what looked like a spoon or a shard of metal, were 4 words. "You put me here." By dawn, the prison was sealed. No movement in or out. State police arrived alongside internal affairs, and by mid-morning, the governor's office was demanding answers. Daniel Reeves wasn't supposed to die like this. Not after what he knew. Detective Mara Holt stood outside the cell, her jaw tight, eyes scanning the damage. Holt had worked homicides for 15 years, but prisons unsettled her. There were no bystanders here, no helpful neighbors peeking through curtains. Just systems, routines, and silence. And silence, she knew, could be weaponized. Reeves had been placed in solitary after allegedly assaulting another inmate. The report said it was unprovoked. The surveillance footage, conveniently, had malfunctioned. Since then, Reeves had lived in a 6x9 foot box, alone for 23 hours a day. No phone calls, no programs, no human touch. He was deteriorating, said Dr. Leonard Price, the prison psychologist, his voice careful, auditory hallucinations, severe paranoia. He claimed the walls were talking to him. Holt turned toward him. "Did you believe him?" Price hesitated. "I believed he was suffering." That wasn't an answer. Reeves hadn't always been a ghost. Before prison, he'd been a dock worker in Baltimore, married once, divorced, no kids. Quiet neighbors described him as polite and forgettable. But the crime that put him away was anything but. 10 years earlier, a federal informant named Kyle Mercer was found dead in a motel room off Interstate 95. Shot once in the chest, execution style. Mercer had been cooperating in a massive drug trafficking case, and Reeves was accused of pulling the trigger. The evidence was circumstantial, but the jury didn't hesitate. Reeves never stopped claiming he was innocent. 2 weeks before his death, Reeves had filed a handwritten grievance from solitary. It was flagged by a junior clerk and buried under a stack of paperwork. Holt read it now, standing under flickering fluorescent lights. "They know what I know. That's why I'm here. If I die in this cell, it wasn't my choice." What did he know? Holt asked aloud. The warden, Thomas Granger, shifted uncomfortably. Reeves was manipulative. Inmates lie. "Dead men don't file grievances," Holt replied. As the investigation widened, small details began to scrape at the surface. Guards reported Reeves talking to himself, sometimes shouting names late at night. Names that weren't documented. One officer admitted, off the record, that Reeves had begged not to be left alone. He said the silence was loud. The officer whispered, said it was eating him. In the infirmary, the autopsy revealed something stranger. Reeves hadn't died from hanging, as first assumed. The bruising around his neck was inconsistent. There were injection marks on his arm, fresh and precise. Someone had entered the most secure wing of the prison without leaving a trace. Security logs showed no unauthorized access. Cameras, again, had glitched. Holt felt the clock ticking. Every hour that passed meant evidence lost. Stories aligning too neatly. She requested Reeves's mental health records and discovered something that made her stomach drop. 6 months earlier, Reeves had been scheduled for release from solitary back into general population. The recommendation came from Dr. Price himself, but the transfer was canceled at the last minute, overruled by an internal memo citing security concerns. The signature at the bottom wasn't Price's. It belonged to Deputy Warden Elias Crow. Crow had a reputation. Efficient, untouchable, the kind of administrator who climbed by never leaving fingerprints. When Holt asked to speak with him, she was told he was unavailable. That night, Holt sat in her car outside the prison, rain streaking the windshield. She replayed the facts. Reeves, isolated for over a year, mentally unraveling, claiming to know something dangerous. Then dead, in a place designed to erase men quietly. Solitary confinement wasn't just punishment, it was leverage. The next morning, Holt received an anonymous envelope at her office. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a grainy photograph. The photo showed Daniel Reeves, thinner, eyes hollow, standing beside another inmate in an older prison yard shot. On the back, written in block letters, Mercer didn't die alone. The paper listed dates, times, and a name Holt hadn't seen in the case file. Kyle Mercer's handler, a federal agent who had testified years ago, then vanished into retirement. Holt looked up, pulse pounding. If Reeves had tried to expose corruption, if Solitary had been used to silence him, then his death wasn't an end. It was a warning. She drove straight back to Westbridge and demanded access to the old isolation wing, long abandoned and sealed after a renovation. The warden protested. The locks resisted. But eventually, the door groaned open. Inside, the air was stale, untouched. On the far wall of the final cell, hidden beneath peeling paint, Holt saw more carvings. Names, dates, dozens of them. Some crossed out, some circled. And at the center, etched deeper than the rest, was Daniel Reeves's message, repeated over and over until the concrete was scarred beyond repair. Solitary isn't to protect them, it's to protect you. But when Holt noticed a final name on the list, one that belonged to someone still alive, someone high inside the system, she realized Reeves hadn't been confessing. He had been documenting, and whatever he uncovered was still buried inside those walls. Detective Mara Holt didn't sleep that night. The name carved into the wall Evan Calder burned behind her eyes. Calder wasn't just someone high inside the system. He was a former federal agent, once celebrated for dismantling narcotics rings up and down the East Coast. Kyle Mercer's handler, the man whose testimony had sealed Daniel Reeves's fate. And according to public records, Evan Calder had retired 7 years ago and disappeared into quiet obscurity. That kind of silence was never accidental. By morning, Holt was back inside Westbridge, moving through the prison like an intruder in enemy territory. Word of the carving discovery had already spread. Guards avoided her gaze. Doors seemed to take longer to unlock. The building felt defensive, like a living thing tightening its grip. Dr. Leonard Price met her in his office, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. "You knew," Holt said flatly. "You knew Reeves was deteriorating, and you still let him stay in solitary." Price swallowed. "I tried to get him out." "Then why didn't you?" "Because every time Reeves talked about Mercer, about Calder, the paperwork vanished. Requests denied. Evaluations delayed. And then Crow would call me in." Deputy Warden Elias Crow again. "What did Reeves tell you?" Holt pressed. Price stood and crossed to the window, lowering his voice. "He said Mercer was killed because he was going to expose his own handler. Calder was skimming money, selling information, using informants as disposable assets. That's a hell of an accusation. I told Reeves he needed proof. He said he had it, or had it once." Holt's pulse quickened. "Where?" Price shook his head. "That's when they put him in solitary. Permanent status." Solitary confinement wasn't just isolation anymore. It was erasure. As Holt left the office, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "You're looking in the wrong place," a male voice said before she could speak. The line went dead. Within the hour, Internal Affairs ordered Holt off the prison grounds, citing jurisdictional overlap. The message was clear: back off. Instead, Holt did what she'd learned to do early in her career. She went around. Public records led her to a quiet coastal town in Delaware, where Evan Calder supposedly owned a modest retirement home. The address existed. The mailbox bore his name. But the house was empty, dusty and untouched, like no one had lived there in years. A neighbor across the street watched Holt from behind lace curtains. When she finally stepped outside, she spoke in a whisper. "He left suddenly," the woman said. "Middle of the night. Men came. Government looking." "When?" 2 days ago. 2 days ago, hours before Daniel Reeves was found dead. Holt returned to her car and felt the weight of it settle in. Calder wasn't hiding. He was running. Back in Baltimore, Holt tracked down Reeves' ex-wife, Lena. She hadn't spoken to Daniel Underscotoggle since the trial, but she remembered something strange from the months before his arrest. "He kept saying the same thing," Lena said, staring at her coffee. "If I disappear, it's because I talked. I thought it was paranoia." "Did he ever give you anything? Documents? Files?" Lena hesitated, then stood and walked to a closet. From the back, she pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. "He mailed this to me from prison," she said. "Told me not to open it unless something happened to him." Inside were photocopies of bank statements, coded notes, and one photograph. Kyle Mercer, standing beside Evan Calder, both smiling. Written on the back was a date, 3 days before Mercer's death, and a phone number. The number rang once before someone answered. "Stop," the voice said immediately. "If you keep digging, more people will die." Daniel Reeves already did. Holt snapped. A pause, breathing on the other end. Solitary broke him, the voice said finally, but it didn't break what he knew. The call ended. Within hours, Holt's apartment was ransacked. Nothing stolen, just a message. Her case files scattered across the floor, Reeves' name circled in red ink. She wasn't just being watched, she was being warned. That night, Holt met with a journalist she trusted, Sam Ortega, feeding him pieces of the story. If anything happened to her, she wanted the truth somewhere public. Ortega listened in silence, his face hardening with every detail. "This goes deeper than a prison," he said. "If Solitary was used to silence informants, that's systemic abuse." Before Holt could respond, Ortega's phone lit up. A text message. "I know what Reeves knew. Meet me." The location was pinned to an abandoned federal holding facility outside the city. Against her instincts, Holt went. The building was dark, windows shattered, the air thick with mold and decay. A single light flickered in the hallway. From the shadows stepped Dr. Leonard Price. "I couldn't stay silent anymore," he said. "Reeves wasn't the first." Price led Holt to a locked room deep inside the facility. On the walls were files, dozens of them. Names of inmates placed in extended solitary. Informants. Witnesses. Men who had threatened to expose corruption. Solitary was the perfect tool, Price said. No marks. No witnesses. Just psychological collapse. "And Calder?" Holt asked. Price's face fell. He orchestrated it, but he wasn't alone. Footsteps echoed behind them. Deputy Warden Elias Crow emerged from the darkness, gun raised, expression calm. "You should have listened," Crow said. "Now you're both part of the record." As Crow advanced, Holt noticed something on the wall behind him, a final file, recently added, a name written in fresh ink, Mara Holt. And in that moment, she understood. Daniel Reeves hadn't been a victim of solitary confinement. He had been its last warning, because the system wasn't finished yet. The gunshot echoed through the abandoned facility, loud enough to rattle loose dust from the ceiling. Mara Holt reacted without thinking. She shoved Dr. Leonard Price sideways as a bullet tore through the air where his head had been a second earlier. They hit the floor hard, the smell of old concrete and gunpowder filling Holt's lungs. Crow fired again, methodical, controlled, not panicked, not angry, professional. Holt crawled behind a rusted metal cabinet as another shot sparked against the wall. Her heart pounded, but her mind was clear. Crow wasn't there to interrogate them. He was there to erase them. Price was shaking, his breathing sharp and uneven. "He's not supposed to be here," he whispered. This facility was decommissioned. "That's why he chose it," Holt said. "No witnesses. No cameras." Crow's footsteps were slow, deliberate. He spoke calmly, as if lecturing. "Do you have any idea how fragile order is?" he said. "Men like Reeves threaten that order. So do people like you." Holt peeked around the cabinet and spotted a side corridor. A chance. She grabbed Price and bolted. They ran blind through darkness, boots slapping against concrete. Another shot rang out, grazing Holt's arm. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but she kept moving. They burst through an exit door and into the night air just as sirens wailed in the distance. Crow cursed. Sam Ortega had done exactly what Holt hoped he would. The moment her phone went dark, he called it in. Police cruisers flooded the area, light slicing through the trees. Crow vanished into the shadows, leaving his gun behind. For now, the next 48 hours cracked the case wide open. Ortega's article hit first, splashed across every major outlet. Solitary silence, how isolation was used to bury federal secrets. Names followed, files leaked, bank records tied Evan Calder to offshore accounts funded by seized drug money. Informants who'd died in custody. Witnesses who'd lost their minds in solitary before recanting testimony. Daniel Reeves's name became the center of it all. The official narrative shifted quickly. Prison administrators resigned. Internal investigations multiplied. The governor promised reform, oversight, transparency. Words Holt had heard before. Crow was arrested 2 days later trying to cross the border with a false passport. Under interrogation, he said nothing. No denials. No excuses. Just silence. The same silence he'd weaponized for years. But Evan Calder was still missing. Holt sat alone in the interrogation observation room, watching Crow through the glass. He met her eyes once and smiled. "You think this ends with me?" he asked softly. Holt didn't answer. 3 weeks later, Calder was found dead in a marina outside Lisbon. Official cause, suicide. 1 gunshot wound. No note. The case closed quietly, efficiently. Too efficiently. Reeves was posthumously cleared of Mercer's murder. His conviction vacated. Headlines called him a victim of the system, a man broken by isolation. His family received a settlement, an apology letter drafted by a committee. No one mentioned the carving on the wall. Holt returned to Westbridge one final time. The solitary wing was empty now, scheduled for permanent closure. Cells stood open, hollow, stripped of their purpose. In Reeves's cell, the wall had been painted over, smooth and blank. But Holt knew what had been there. She stood in the center of the room and imagined the days bleeding together. No voices, no faces, just the echo of your own thoughts turning against you. Solitary confinement hadn't killed Daniel Reeves with a rope or a needle. It had killed him slowly, deliberately, by convincing him he no longer existed. Months passed. Reforms were announced. Limits placed on isolation. Oversight boards formed. For the public, the story ended neatly. A scandal exposed. Justice served. For Holt, it didn't feel finished. Late one evening, she received a padded envelope at her door. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a single sheet of paper. You missed one. The drive contained files, newer ones. Inmates currently in solitary across multiple states. Extended durations. Mental health flags ignored. Names Holt recognized from ongoing investigations. And one final document. A memo proposing the strategic use of isolation for risk mitigation. The language was polished, legal, sanitized. The author's name wasn't Crow's. It wasn't Calder's either. Holt leaned back in her chair, the room silent except for her breathing. Daniel Reeves had tried to warn them. Not about one man, not about one prison, about a system that knew exactly what it was doing. Solitary confinement was never about safety. It was about control. And control, Holt realized, never disappears. It just changes hands. Somewhere, another cell door was closing. Another man was being left alone with his thoughts. Another truth was being buried behind concrete walls and paperwork. Holt copied the files, backed them up, and sent the first message to Ortega. The fight wasn't over. It was just quieter now. And if this story stayed with you longer than you expected, if it made you uncomfortable in the silence, remember this. There are more names still carved into walls you'll never see. Stay close, pay attention, and don't miss what comes next.